It's time to strap in for another edition of the CarsGuide Podcast, the show that takes you beyond the test drive. This is episode number 213, an Audi or a Honda? I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James, and joining me in unpacking Honda's bold Aussie market approach, our key contributor, Mr. Dave Morley.
G'day.
And it's GR Gowich to News Editor Tung, joining us from Dublin.
Hello.
We'll also take a look at the fresh metal we've been driving and dive into your feedback. It's not so fresh in the case of Dave, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. YouTubers, you can jump ahead via the time codes in the notes or click on the chapter markers in the timeline. So let's get to it. This is an opinion piece that our own Byron authored through the week, and he basically summed it up and said, you asked for it, you've got it. The price we pay for much better Hondas. And in shorthand, I think the general consensus has been that Honda may have tapered off in terms of the quality of the product from an engineering, a design, and execution point of view. And they've gone from great heights not all that long ago to a relative low ebb. And now, in the face of that, they've changed the structure of the way they're going to sell the cars in Australia, and in fact have a long game strategy in terms of making the cars better, more interesting, more innovative, to try and recapture some of that mojo that they had only a decade or a decade and a half ago. But we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay a little more. So, Dave, you and I are certainly of an age where we remember well Honda's vibrant years through the 80s into the 90s. They were a force in Formula One engine supply. They had the reputation of being like a Japanese European car, the Japanese BMW.
Yep.
Where do you stand with Honda as it is today relative to all of that past glory?
It's a Honda I don't recognise. They talk about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. If you look at some of their more recent efforts, the Odyssey of 10 years ago or so was this cool-looking station wagon with the blue-tinted headlights, and it was cool. It was a good car. Then they come out with the new Odyssey, and I'm going, well, that's a parcel van. I can see where they've taken the stickers off the side. It was awful.
Yes.
What's going on there? I just don't understand how that process could make it past the boardroom.
Yes.
Or the product planning stage. I just don't understand some things. Now, okay, there's a lot of things I don't understand about Japanese car makers, but one of the things I do know about Honda is that, you're right. In its heyday, it was rocking, it was making some great cars, and it was pig-headed in a way. It stuck to its guns on a lot of tech, but even that was kind of endearing, even when it didn't work so well.
It was admirable, wasn't it? They've given it a go. Yes.
Yeah. right in the late 80s, everyone, the world and his dog, had switched to electronic injection or at least single point injection, not Honda. You could still buy a Civic with twin carburetors, and it was a gem. It was an absolute gem of a thing. I drove one interstate once and I came back going, well, what's the big deal with fuel injection? This is just good.
Yeah.
And of course, my background with motorcycles too. If you carburate something properly,
it's a good setup.
It's indistinguishable from good fuel injection. So, and that's what struck me about that car. But there were lots of other things they did too. When they did finally go to fuel injection, they didn't just buy an off-the-shelf Bosch Motronic system. They produced PGM-FI, I think it was called.
Okay. Yes.
They stuck with that for years, and it was an in-house thing. It probably had its limitations in terms of development. It probably didn't have the headroom that a system like a Bosch does, because everybody's using Bosch. So, there's lots of technology, lots of development money for that. So they painted themselves into a bit of a corner there. But even things like the insistence on using double wishbones. There was a time when all Hondas had double wishbones, front and rear. Now, the rest of the world, again, had moved on and had gone to McPherson struts, not Honda. And it backfired a little bit, because on their smaller cars, they couldn't get the length of wishbone necessary to get enough wheel articulation. So they had to set them up very, very stiff.
Yes.
And there was
That's
a price.
A strong memory too, yes.
There was a price to pay for that. But when you bought a Honda, you were getting double wishbones at both ends, and for a lot of people, that was what mattered, particularly people who back then were following the Formula One thing.
Tung, you're not averse to a firm suspension. I know that much. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you are a former Honda owner of various stripes, are you not?
I'm actually a current Honda owner.
Yes.
93 EG Civic in my parents' garage that I am changing engines on. There's a B16A that's being dropped in there. Like I grew up in the 90s. Honda for me has always been, Type R, Integra, NSX, S2000. Even Accord Euro. These models were exciting. They're the ones that you saw on the streets and people modified, and it got everyone excited, or at least in my age bracket, excited about Honda. To quote a meme, it seemed like VTEC had kicked in back then, and now the brand is coasting a little bit. There is nothing exciting in their lineup anymore. You look at Honda Australia now; they sell the Civic, the HRV, the CRV, and the Accord. That's it.
I think that the thing that occurs to me is when Honda was such a force in Formula One, there's that, you do that, and that's an activity that hopefully feeds back into the broader organization. And that's exactly what they did. They cycled engineers through the Formula One team and then brought them back into the company so that there was a kind of physical connection between all of that innovation to the products that were being connected. And further to that, when you looked at the back end of, Ayrton Senna's McLaren with a Honda in the back of it, the cam cover on that car looked exactly the same as the cam cover when you cracked open the bonnet on your Civic. There was this beautiful uniformity of the brand and how it was expressed in the products that they made. And that just seems to have fallen away. I think it became, was it Earth Dreams? Was Honda's thing for a while, where the whole business seemed to go into a bit of a malaise about what are we and why are we doing what we're doing. And a lot of the products seem to kind of fall off the perch during that process.
I think it's a bit dangerous, though, to single Honda out there. I mean, a lot of car makers hit the doldrums. Look at Toyota 20 years ago.
True.
It went from the JZ80 Supra to nothing,
All
of a sudden, everything was a Paseo.
Yes.
They had some cracking cars, and even if the cars themselves weren't so good, the backstory was,
good point.
And the MR2 and things like that, and until the 86 came along, they suddenly rediscovered that. But there's a lot of Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi are on the bones of their backside, haven't got the money to develop a new Lancer, for God's sake. So I mean, it's you don't want to be too hard on them for that, because every company goes through that. But what worries me a bit about them is that they went from a company that understood that different markets had different requirements, and that's how we ended up with the V6 Accord selling directly against the 4-cylinder Accord Euro. And, one car was a peach, and one was a
not so peachy.
Not so peachy. I nearly said it. But so that appears to have gone too. I think the other thing to remember is that it's also a bit dangerous to give them a kicking over just having little SUVs, because hell, God knows they're not alone there.
Oh, that's where the market's gone, no doubt.
You look at even Ford, Ford, the champion of the people's small car. You can't buy a Fiesta now unless it's an S2.
Dave, I think the difference here, though, is that like no other car brand, sure, the car brands have pivoted away from maybe their enthusiast or their sports car, halo car roots. No other car company has done it as leanly as Honda has. There are 4 models that they have in their range right now. The Civic is only available in one spec now, and that is $47,000 drive away. And their big plan is they were a top 10 brand, not 2 or 3 years ago. And they've actually said on the record that moving to a new agency sales model is pushing a little bit more up market and slimming down their range is going to force their sales. They're going to halve their sales.
Do you know? I reckon what's emblematic of where Honda was and where Honda is now and where it's going is the NSX, in that you have in the late 80s, early 90s, that original V6 NSX was a breakthrough car for all kinds of reasons. a halo car for the brand, no doubt. And then you look at the more recent NSX, which was, you just didn't see the point. The original one, it was a statement from Honda. This is what we're capable of doing. The next time around, it was more like, well, we're just going to make this thing. It's going to be Ferrari money. It doesn't really do anything. Yes, it's a hybrid, but it's not all that different from other exotic sports cars you can buy. It was like, why are you doing that? So to refocus and say, have a strategy that says this is what we're going to be, and this is how we're going to market ourselves in Australia, at least, sounds like a good starting point to rebuild things.
Maybe that says more about people's expectations, though, because I mean, I remember the first NSX, and if you're going to be perfectly brutal about it, it didn't do anything that other supercars didn't do either. In fact, I wasn't a huge fan of that car, and I've copped it in the neck over the years for my view on that. At the time I called it a really fast Civic. Well, I remember you and I were punching on at one stage, Dave. I know we got right into it at one point. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it just didn't do it for me. And I don't know that original NSX made any more of a statement than the new one.
Okay.
But the statement that it made was that, look, we can do this too. It was a Me Too car in a lot of ways.
That's very interesting you say that, because I remember at the time, Angus McKenzie, now long in the States, connected with Motor Trend, etc. He went to the Tochigi plant where those NSXs were handmade, and he saw people in white coats. And I remember him saying to me, all these people looked at me with the hammer and dolly in their hand, and they're doing the forming on the alloy bodies, like looking at him like, isn't there a machine that can do this? Why are we doing this? It was a sense of we've got to do it this way because Ferrari does it this way.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's
interesting.
That's tokenism for me,
Right.
Yeah, okay. I also thought the original NSX didn't have enough engine.
Yes, maybe.
It was all mouth and no trousers.
All hat and no cattle.
All candles and no cake.
Yes. So, Tung, you started us down that road that Honda in Australia has made that move to what is referred to as an agency model. That is, they'll control the stock holding of cars that are in the country. Dealers will become agents that are not in a position to haggle on price or specification of the car. They're the facilitator of the transaction. And what will happen also in that process is that they've trimmed their model lineup quite dramatically. The Jazz is gone. The NSX we were just talking about. The cheapest Civic now, there's one model, the VTI LX, so it's top grade, and it's nudging up towards $50,000 drive away. So it's a big shift, rather sudden, and it will probably catch people by surprise, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. But I also think, to come in and defend Honda a little bit here, I genuinely think that, they have looked at the product portfolio that was available to them. They've read the tea leaves, they've looked at the industry, and they've basically said, you know what, if we don't make this change now, if we don't make this pivot and try to, evolve into a more sort of premium or higher end brand, we're going to fade away into irrelevancy. So they made that call early. I believe they announced the shift to the agency model last year. It came into effect earlier this year. We're starting to see, the new Civic roll around. There'll be a new HRV next year. There's going to be quite a substantial, product refresh. And I think we need to give it a whole generation or a few years yet before we can deem whether this is a success or a failure for them.
I agree with you. I think, for example, when you think about Hyundai in a decade and a half ago, when their cars were becoming demonstrably better and they were actually able to sell much more on the quality and features of their cars rather than just being a price leader. It's taken some time for that perception to wash through. So if you want to reposition yourself as a more premium brand, that's going to take a while as well. But you've got to start somewhere.
Look, you're talking 5-6 years down the track. I'm not sure they've got that in them.
Right.
I think this is a cry for help. I really
right.
Right. And the other thing is, you talk about Hyundai, and if you look at all the great recoveries or improving brands, it's generally been a product-led recovery. Look at Mazda a few years ago. They brought out the 3 and the 2, and all of a sudden they went from these dowdy little dumpsters to these fantastic cars that were great value for money. and P platers couldn't buy them fast enough.
Yes,
I'm not sure that Honda's getting rid of the Jazz. I mean, come on.
Yes, it's interesting. I sometimes think about all of those thousands upon thousands of XLs that were sold, and how you don't see them anymore. I'm sure they're tucked up in garages, in a heated environment, in a humidity environment to keep them in great shape.
No, they're not. They're either being raced or the front ends fell out of them and they hit trees.
Exactly.
Exactly
right.
They're now microwave ovens.
Yes, they are.
To be fair, the new generation Civic is a big step up over the outgoing car.
All right.
So,
yes.
The product is, leaps and bounds much better than it was before. It's just the price, I think, is the sticking point for us journalists and a lot of the people as well. Yeah.
And it's nearly the same money as the Type R.
Yes,
which I really rate. I think that's the best hot hatch you can buy. I really love that car.
Well, I think the interesting point or uninteresting point is while Honda is trying to trim down and head upwards, the likes of Merc is trying to bulk up and head downwards. When you think about A-Class and CLA and all of those entry price leader models for Merc, they're trying to fill out their opportunity in the opposite direction.
Yeah, but I mean, for someone like Mercedes, the only way is down. In terms of product side, they own the S-Class thing, so they invented that. And as a result, if they want to broaden their market reach, the only way to do that is to go down market.
It's funny you bring up Mercedes as well, because they're also moving to an agency sales.
They are indeed
next year.
They are indeed, and in fact, there's legal action, bubbling along as we speak, because they're franchisees, their retailers aren't happy.
So obviously, I think Mercedes sees some benefit in moving to that sales model. Customers, surveys have said that the one thing that car buyers hate the most is going into a dealership and haggling, and this takes away all of that. You know the price that you're going to get. You can see it online. You can just order it, get it delivered, go pick it up, just like your groceries.
Well, that's it, and that's presumably where the dealers are feeling compromised, because they've had that latitude in the past to be a dealer, to make a deal. But if they're just facilitating a purchase that could be executed online and they're delivering the car, it's an entirely different world for them.
It's not just new cars either. And can I just say too, the expression agency model, the first thing I think of is not a car dealership.
It's an attractive person. Yes.
I recently had to buy a car for my in-laws who had stuffed their Golf 7 into the back of a four-wheel drive.
Oh dear, righto.
Both bags. Anyway, they walked away, but the insurance company wrote their car off. What are we going to? And they live up in in country New South Wales. What are we going to do? Oh well, let me think. Our son-in-law happens to be a car journalist. Why don't we ask him? So I told them what to do. They did the opposite, but I had to go and do the deal. And I went to a large sort of a quasi wholesaler, and the deal there was that's the price. You either pay it or you get the bus.
Yes.
There was no haggling whatsoever.
Yes.
Which was, I mean, I was trying to get a few dollars off, but on the other hand, I hate haggling.
Yes.
I would starve to death in Southeast Asia because I won't haggle. I can't buy anything.
Well, a good mate of my brother's and a good mate of mine, his technique for whenever he's selling a car is the price, because he knows that if someone is interested in the car, and in fact interested enough to turn up and take a look, they probably want to own it. There's part of them that wants to do that. And if he plays hard ball, he'll find them out very quickly. So that's his technique.
Good on him.
All right. Now, the other thing to mention also is that Honda has made the point that this is not just a financial thing, although in the long run, I suppose it is. They want it to be very much about customer service. Their agency model is all about customer service first. And to your point, Dave, taking haggling out of the equation is a big one for them.
Was that in the press release by any chance?
It's in Byron's story.
Well, we've got our customers' best interest. That's our first priority. Is it? Wouldn't be the share price, would it?
No. Yeah. Well, the other thing is, Tung, you mentioned it, that we're looking at a new HRV, and we're looking at 2023 a new CRV. And then there's the ZRV, which is going to take them into, I believe, the battery electric world. So the innovative product, the more premium positioning, you'd like to hope that the quality comes up to meet that. There'll be initial sticker shock, but time will tell whether people are willing to pay Audi money for a Honda.
Yeah. I think, like I said before, I mean, if the new generation Civic is any indication, then Honda are on the right track with their product. They have talked about trying to fill in a few holes in their try to fill a few holes in their lineup. Yep. They need a sub HRV SUV, something to compete against the Hyundai, Venue, Toyota Yaris Cross, that sort of thing. And they might even look at a larger SUV to sit above the CRV. So they're definitely making the right moves with more SUVs, as we all know. I just think time will tell whether or not we flock to these products. I personally, I think the product and the quality is going to get there. It's just whether or not the consumers can get over the higher price tags.
Well, I suppose to round out the discussion, Byron in his story says Australia doesn't need an inferior Toyota clone. A cheaper Audi A3 alternative from Japan makes much more sense. And he says, let's give the brand that was once dubbed the fear of Europe a chance. So that's his position. He's saying, look, let it play out. Don't judge it too quickly. Let's see what kind of proof resides in the pudding.
Have they had a bunch of boardroom changes or upper management changes in quick succession? Because they seem to me that Honda will do this thing where they develop something or spend a lot of money developing something and then just go, no, we can't be bothered now.
Can't be bothered. Well, it's also it depends on how dramatically you ride the roller coaster of success or otherwise, as to how much money you've got in the till.
Okay, so let me use the example of Toyota. Toyota said, and this is 10, 15 years ago when diesel cars were, believe it or not, sexy. People wanted diesels. And Toyota said, no, we're sticking with petrol. We'll get you a hybrid version of that in years to come. And they have, and they've stuck to it, and it's now paying off. I don't see that level of commitment's probably the wrong word, but that level of sticking with a program at Honda. I'm seeing a lot more, jumping around, different things, picking up new things, whatever's trendy this month. And from where I sit, maybe this agency model thing might be a flash in the pan too. They might go back to,
Can I put my tinfoil hat on for a second here?
Go on.
Certainly.
I genuinely think Honda Australia is just in a tough position. You look at Honda America, Honda in the US, they're doing their own thing. They've got Acura, they've got models that we do not get. Ridgeline, that Ute, Honda Passport, Civic Si. They're getting a new Integra over there. They're getting all these, flashy, fancy products that we will never get our hands on. They're basically doing whatever they want. You look over at Honda of Europe, like in the UK, they're going all in on electrification. They've got Honda E all electric, that hatchback, their Jazz and their HRV is, hybrid only. And then Australia is just kind of stuck in the middle there. And it's like, we can't get the product from the US. Electrification is going to be too expensive to sell in Australia. What are we supposed to do here? We need to make a decision about our future direction. And this is their play.
All right.
That's a good point. And we are stuck in the middle and we're a backwater as far as Honda's concerned, regardless of having our customers' best interests at heart, we are a backwater. And if you look at the history of this, Honda's got a big plant in England. They make a lot of cars.
Yeah, sure.
Clout. In the UK, in the US, 40 years ago, Honda just clicked with Americans. And don't ask me why, because it didn't seem to, on paper, it didn't seem that logical. But while the F-150 truck and the Chevy C10 Ute or pickup retained their place on the podium as the two best-selling vehicles, the best-selling passenger car, was the Honda Accord. Years and years. So that brand in the US has got incredible cut through.
Yes, it's true.
And it doesn't exist here.
Well, it's true.
You can forget about an Australianised Honda. It just ain't going to happen. We do not have the muscle.
Good discussion. Let's see how all that percolates through in 2022 and 23. And you can read Byron's story on carsguide.com.au and would be good to get your thoughts if you're listening or viewing on YouTube. Tell us where you stand with Honda. Current owner, former owner, potential, prospective future owner. Tell us where you stand with their philosophy and what you make of it. But now we're going to move to our garage. And Tung, this is a fascinating one because you are on the other side of the globe and you've actually been steering something that is not steerable in this country just yet. Fill us in, please.
No. Well, I've been lucky enough to snag the keys to a Cupra Formentor. And like we joked about earlier, that sounds like some kind of Harry Potter Hogwarts spell.
Yep.
But, for those that don't know, Cupra is, part of Volkswagen Group. That brand was Seat's sort of high performance division. They've spun that off into their own, standalone brand. And the Formentor is actually their first standalone model for Cupra. So it's not based on any existing Seat. It's sort of like a small SUV with wild styling, as you'll see on the YouTube video now. The same platform as the new 8th generation Golf, same engine as the new 8th generation Golf as well. So the 1.5 litre turbo petrol, 110 kilowatts is the variant that I'm in. 7-speed dual clutch automatic. Looks really good. It's very much style focused, and Cupra have said that their brand is focusing on a youth buyer. So someone who might want a car that looks flashy.
So again, they're all about the customer. There you go. They're all about the customer as well. Yes. Sorry, Dave.
Bless them.
Yeah.
I guess some quick things that I like about the car.
Cool.
It's very tech focused. There's a big 12-inch screen in the multimedia for the multimedia. It's all touchscreen, climate controls and all that sort of stuff as well. Got all the bells and whistles that you want. A smartphone charger, heated steering wheel, heated seats, which is an absolute must in Ireland.
Yes.
Where it gets to a balmy 5 degrees.
Yep.
And it looks really good, like I said before. Things that it could probably do better on. The boot's a little bit small, especially when you're carting around a pram and a baby and a wife and a family.
Yes. Put your baby in the boot?
Apologies. Yes. The baby's in the back seat. The baby paraphernalia is in the boot.
Just to clarify.
Yep. I am doing it. It is all above board here.
Actually, it makes sense. Isofix anchors in the boot. That could be a thing. I quite like it. Yeah.
And then, soundproof boots would be the next thing, wouldn't it?
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah. See?
Keep the crying in the...
I should do product planning.
And Tung, where do you buy it? Do you buy it at a standalone Cupra kind of dealership, or have you noticed that? Are they on the ground there?
I haven't noticed any Cupra dealerships. There's a lot of Volkswagen. But I know the Australian plan is to tack on Cupra to select Volkswagen dealerships.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, cool.
And I think that they'll be selling a lot of these cars online in Australia as well.
All right.
Once again, skewing very heavily towards the younger buyer. But they'll be here in 2022. They'll have more than just the 1.5 litre engine on offer, and let's see how they do.
Super. All right. And you're going to be updating on the site your adventures in that car. Absolutely. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve there, thanks to your foray into Ireland. So well done. That's good. Okay. Thank you. And Dave, you've not been in fresh metal. You've been in metal that has been around the block several times. Tell us about your most recent adventure.
Well, I had to drive from Melbourne to Bowral for the memorial service for Paul Coburn, which a lot of people watching this will be familiar with Paul's work. Very funny rider, ingenious industrial designer, designed the Dolphin Torch, among many other things. And he was a great mate of mine. And he passed away about 3 weeks ago now. So we had a memorial for him this time last week. And I had to drive up there because what's the point of flying?
Sure.
So I dusted off my 2003, I think it is, Holden Commodore SS Ute.
Unreal.
And away we went. And I loaded the bride and the toolbox in the back and an esky.
Fantastic.
And away we went. And I did 2,000 Ks in the space of a handful of days. It got fuel consumption into the high 8s.
Yep. And that's fantastic, isn't it? That's pretty impressive.
with 300 and something horsepower under your clog, and you can do that. And I wasn't messing around either. I mean, I had to get up there in a hurry, and
yes,
you know, may the force not see you. And I came home the back way over the snowy mountain.
Oh, great!
So I was giving it some large there, up the hills, of course, not speeding or anything, but it performed admirably. And the only problem with it is the limited slip diffs getting a bit ropey, and when the diff was getting hot on the freeway, you'd slow down to an off ramp or something, and you could hear the clutch packs chattering.
Oh wow, I see.
So, but there's a fix for that, and it's a branded additive that I have to get and add to the diff. And
super, that's easy. Then
shut it up. Other than that, the thing, it doesn't rattle, it doesn't burn. It's done nearly 200,000 Ks now, and I've said it before, but we are really going to miss those cars.
Oh, I was going to say that's a classic Aussie drive, isn't it? That's exactly the purpose to which that type of vehicle was suited. Yeah.
Well, in fact, my other half said, "What car are we going to take? We can take my lot." I said, "No, I don't think that's appropriate. It's not what Paul would have expected.
Yes, would have wanted." Right, fair.
And I said, "It's got, it's fast, it's air conditioned, it's comfy, it's got leather. Let's take the Ute." And
unreal.
I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, good, excellent. Well, thank you for that update. That's superb. Now, I can round things off with a Toyota. It's the GR Yaris, but it's the rally version, which picks up some stiffer springs and anti-roll bars, gets some fancier wheels and some stickier rubber. But really, it's polishing up an already very shiny vehicle, in my view. So this is $54,500. The standard GR Yaris is $49,500. So you've got a $5,000 premium. It's a 1.6 litre turbo triple, 6-speed manual, all-wheel drive. You've got 2 LSDs, one on each axle on this car, 200 kilowatts, 370 Newton meters. And look, it's basically a slot car. I had the opportunity to drive it at the launch and have a fang around Canberra and what have you. And so getting back into this one, I thought, it's going to be really cart sprung and feel horrible. It doesn't. It feels a little bit firmer, but this is what you're signing on for with a car like this. When you buy it, you're ready for it. And it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's relatively comfy, and it's just so much fun to drive. The relationship between the wheel and the pedals and the seat and the gearbox and the way the engine and drivetrain connect with one another, it's just magical. I really love it. The only minus I'd have is, it is a little bit bumpier, but I reckon it's an instant collectible classic. It's not a numbered kind of limited run, but every one does have a number on it. So for as long as it goes, you'll have something half special. But it's a car that you should drive. I loved it, and I think Toyota has. Here we talk about Toyota and the strides they've made in making more interesting product. There's an absolute shining case in point, as far as I'm concerned. All right. Now, feedback. We're going to go to comment of the week. So this comment is positioned on top of the shipping container at the front of the CarsGuide forecourt. It has the fluoro paint on the windscreen. This is one you don't want to miss. So it's Marco Vess, and we were talking about Dave. He's actually Marco VESS, but we like to call him Marco Vess. And he's...
See what you did there.
So we are talking about electric cars, as we invariably are these days. And he said, amazing how some people develop an overnight environmental conscience about lithium and cobalt, as though oil production and its use is clean and green and ethical. It'd be more intellectually honest for those commentators to just admit they don't like the change to EVs. To be fair, I get where people are coming from with their caution, having been uncomfortable with the idea myself. But a test drive changed my mind completely. Now, if I remember correctly, Marco Vess has bought a Tesla. I think he's a Model 3 owner and driver. I stand to be corrected. And he says, have a great Christmas, CarsGuide team and comments section enthusiasts. So what do you make of the whole equivalency, Dave, between the environmental impacts of fossil fuels and internal combustion engines relative to electric motors and the stuff that you have to put in the batteries that power them?
I think it's interesting because you only have to build that motor once. You only have to build the car once. My thing with all of this is how you're charging it up. I mean, if you're charging it up by burning coal, I mean, that's like To me, that's like picking up after your dog, but dumping them on the next corner.
Yes, that's right.
It doesn't. You're just moving the pollution.
Yes.
So, I mean, I love the idea of renewable energy. An electric car with renewable energy, and in fact, I've got 4 kilowatts of solar power on the roof of my place.
Great.
When I've got an electric car, I charge it on a sunny day, and I'm running it on nothing, and I'm not killing baby fur seals.
Nice.
So that's where, I mean, that's not rocket surgery either, is it? We all do that stuff, but you've got to change the way you think. And again, since we've had the solar on the roof, on a sunny day, we go and turn everything on, the dishwasher and the washing machine, and get everything done while the sun's shining.
Sun's on. Yeah, good.
So you actually start to think differently about how you live. And you start to consider the fact that if I go out now and press the charge button on the hot water service, it'll get hot for free. If I wait till tonight,
it's not so free.
There'll be lumps of coal heating it up. So once you get your head around all that stuff, I mean,
that's cool.
And we're going to reach a point where energy to charge your electric car and everything else will be renewable.
I think, sorry, I'll pick your brains in a sec, Tung, but I just wanted to chuck my 2 bobs in. I think humans as a species are just driven towards providing a more comfortable environment for themselves. And in doing that, we consume stuff. So we'll find a way to use up the Earth's resources, no matter what it is. So yes, I think there are things to consider in the whole electric vehicle thing. It's a matter of minimisation, potentially not eradication, but that's just my thoughts. Tung, where do you stand on that whole thing?
Well, it's not like you can flick on a switch and all of a sudden everything is renewable and fossil fuels aren't, being burnt up. Like, it's a stepped progress. You've got to get electric vehicles into the hands of people. And if that's, being built, with high emitting factories and all that sort of stuff, so be it, But until you get those EVs into the hands of consumers, you need to do that first. And then you can start talking about, how you're going to recharge them. And then sort of refine that process and find a cleaner way to build those cars going forward. So it's going to happen.
A bit of chicken and egg, you reckon? You got to lead with the chicken and or vice versa. Yes, but get it going.
Yep. Once EVs hit critical mass, and then that's where you're going to start to see the real big changes.
Cool. All right. Well,
I reckon.
Sorry, Dave.
I reckon if you break it down, the whole environmental argument or the whole situation is absolutely solvable by the application of technology. That technology already exists. We just have to have we need governments who have the stones to implement it. And we need to educate people that it's going to cost them dollars to do it.
Yes.
But if you want to continue to breathe air and pat your dog and live in a nice house, it's going to cost.
Yes, good call.
But at the end of the day, it's technology and engineering, and it exists already. We already know how to do it. We just have to knuckle down and do it.
It's probably an instinctive fear of the unknown. It's normalising what people aren't used to yet, and I think that's a very fair point. All right, now with that, we have reached the finish line for this episode and for 2021. We'll be back in mid-January, but until then, look out for our topical and verbally violent holiday cage fight episodes to hopefully keep you entertained over the break. But for now, it's time to say thank you, Dave.
My pleasure.
And Guru Mahagut, Tung.
Irish readers, please correct James's pronunciation.
Chime in, just have a crack.
I think you may have just insulted him.
Did you have no idea what I've said? I hope I just said thank you. And hats off to our director of Water Cooler Conversations, generator of good vibes, and production demigod, Mr. Pritchard, for his amazing work all year. Today, he's wearing a T-shirt saying, "My wife says I only have 2 faults. I don't listen and something else. Santa pants and elf shoes." So very topical, very timely. Jump into the conversation. Cars Guide is on Facebook and Instagram, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Apple Podcast listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the show. 5 is the preferred number of stars. Thank you. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe to the Cars Guide YouTube channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, was on the blower at a couple of my mates earlier this week. You know, now the border's open. They're on their way back from Queensland. They took the inland route, and just after I got onto them, Tom in the passenger seat told me they'd been stuck behind a tractor for 10 minutes, you know, weaving left and right, flashing their lights, honking the horn. Then old mate Dave, who was driving, finally got up the confidence to overtake it. And Tom said, now if we can find a way out of this paddock, we can really get going.
True dad.